Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Uprise webinar on strategies to improve communication effectiveness. Please say hello in the chat, and so that makes me confident that you can hear me. The other thing that I'd love to hear from you is the context that you're most interested in hearing about. So there's three main contexts really when I was sort of putting together this webinar, and actually I've done a version of this webinar in the past, and I've tended to focus on, because I'm a therapist, I've tended to focus on communication kind of in intimate relationships, how to communicate about getting your needs met. So there's a whole kind of body of research and knowledge around communication in intimate relationships. Then you've got communication in the workplace, and so today I've actually focused more on that was the previous one was where I focused in the past. Today I'm focusing more on communication in the workplace and how to interact with colleagues and managers in a way that's most effective. And the third category of communication effectiveness is doing what I'm doing. How do people who are presenting do a better job of effectively communicating their message? So as we're going along and you have a sense of, am I interested in intimate relationships? Am I interested in communication at work? Am I interested in presenting better? Just share that in the chat, so I've got a good sense of who I'm talking to and what you're interested in. So it looks like people are saying, yeah, workplace, and a bit about presenting. So yes, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country upon which each of us sits today. It's become more of a thing to acknowledge country. If you would like to acknowledge the country where you are, please share that in the chat. And I pay my respects to the elders past and present of the Gumbaynggirr people, which is on the north coast of New South Wales. So I'm a psychological coach with Uprise. I'm a registered counsellor who practices psychotherapy, and I provide a lot of services for Uprise, including a lot of one-to-one work, couples work, teamwork, organisational training, and intervention around critical incidents. Any questions you have, put in the chat. Just as we're going along, just share things as they come up. Relevant to this webinar, if I go back a little bit, relevant to this webinar is that I have qualifications in business administration. I have qualifications in conflict resolution. I have qualifications in family dispute resolution, as well as in psychology, psychotherapy, and counselling. So what we're going to get through today, and as always, it's jam-packed. So I'm going to move quite quickly, but I'm also going to try and make it sure it's tuned to what you're interested in. Effective communication. We're going to look at why is it so important to be able to communicate effectively? How do we define effective communication? What is it? That's actually just one slide, would you believe? Then we're going to look at what makes effective communication so difficult, what gets in the way of our ability to communicate effectively. And usually that's our emotional responses to the situation, to conflict. So we're going to talk a lot about managing your emotional responses when you either in advance of and also coming into conflictual situations. So that's a huge part of effective communication. And then we'll finish off with, okay, well, given you've sorted yourself out, you've got control of your own nervous system, all right, how then do you want to communicate in order to best meet your needs and the needs of others in the environment? Our overarching concept for today is this concept of psychological safety, particularly important for the workplace, because psychological safety is about creating an environment and culture in which team members feel that they can openly and honestly speak up without any fear of judgment or retribution. You could apply team members to family members, to community members, to any other kind of group that you might be a part of. Psychological safety is paramount, because it's the single most significant factor in predicting the cohesiveness, the effectiveness and success of a workplace team, as well as the same for predicting whether a family will be able to work together or whether a community project will be able to work effectively together, or a group of friends. If you feel psychologically safe with your friends, you're going to stick with your group of friends because you feel like you can hang out with your friends and talk about whatever you want to talk about without feeling judged by them. Defining effective communication. So effective communication, a lot of us sort of particularly in a work environment. And then what we can do is we can take the way we are in our work environment into our family environments, not so much our social environments, but definitely into our family environments where if it's not safe, if we don't feel safe, we can just be stuck in, well, here's the information that I have to give to you. Now, where's the information that you have to give to me? So it can become very functional, which takes away from the relationship. So functional relationships, machines can have functional relationships. We don't need humans to just have functional relationships. What humans can do is we can connect with one another. We can connect with one another's wants. We can connect with one another's needs. We can hear and understand one another's feelings about what's happening and how it's happening. And we can prioritize that mutual understanding. And that's how we're defining effective communication, connecting with the other person's wants and needs, prioritizing mutual understanding. So we'll loop back to that towards the end of the webinar, because we're going to spend some time looking at what makes it so hard. So what makes it so hard is that we normally need our communication skills the most when some kind of a conflict has arisen. Now, at the end of the day, a conflict is a difference in expectations. I've got one expectations of the situation and of you. You've got a different set of expectations of me, of the situation, and of yourself. And so we have a conflict. So what happens is that we have a personal lived history and experience with conflict that goes right back to our early childhoods, to time in our families, to time that we spent in schools, where we were modeled to, where we had opportunities to learn about how to communicate and how to resolve conflict. So the reality is, as much as you've done the hard work and as much as you've pulled away from your family and as much as you've distanced yourself from that time of your life, and when you were bullied at school and when the teachers were jerks and when you were being physically abused and all the other kinds of abuse that you might have experienced in your environment, you still carry at a deep level those expectations that you are unsafe, that you need to defend yourself, that you're being attacked, that you need to get on the front foot, that you need to get on the back foot, that you need to subjugate yourself, that you need to dominate the other person. All of that stuff from early in our life comes to the fore. A whole bunch of social stuff comes into that around gender and gender roles and the patriarchy and the male dominance of society, and making male ways of communicating primary over female ways of communicating. And also we've got dominant narratives from dominant cultures. So the white way of doing things is better than the black way of doing things. So all of that comes into our communication styles, not at a conscious level, purely unconscious. We don't even know that we're doing it. It's just there. All of this gets in the way of us being able to effectively communicate. And a good way of looking at it is that we're making assumptions, based upon our past experiences. And as human beings, we are hardwired to do this. We're hardwired to go, okay, I've had this set of experiences. That set of experiences has primed me to respond to similar experiences in the future or present. But we don't have a conscious awareness of it. It's just happening at an unconscious level. So that's the beginning point, to be aware of that, and doing what you can to address and acknowledge your own assumptions. You have assumptions about the way you expect other people to behave. Well, actually, other people aren't like you. They didn't grow up in your household. They didn't grow up in your culture. They don't know the way that you expect people to behave. So we've got to cut them some slack. And you've got to cut yourself some slack as well. We all carry underlying levels of stress, and we know that a higher level of underlying stress leaves your nervous system more vulnerable to stressful situations. So it's like, if this is kind of chill, you're walking around at this level of stress, which is very common in our fast-paced business environments. And then just up here is where it tips into, all right, my nervous system's had enough. I'm flooded. I'm full of emotion. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm irritated. And that starts to come out. I try and communicate as well as I can, but the other person, they hear my tone. They hear the sort of sneaky, spiky remarks, and they then become defensive and they react to that. So I try and communicate myself. I'm feeling irritated. The other person's nervous system responds and they become defensive. I don't perceive them as defensive. I perceive them as aggressive. So now I'm being attacked. So I respond defensively, but they don't perceive me as being defensive. they perceive me as escalating the aggression. And boom, 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 off we're going. Each trying to defend ourselves, each perceiving the other as aggressive. This is across contexts. Situational factors. Very important is our role in relation to the other person. Our role in relation to another person in a given context, that changes our expectations of ourselves and our expectations of the other person. The way that we perceive them to be speaking to us can trigger us in different ways. That changes the way we respond to a situation, gets in the way of effective communication. And again, our level of perceived psychological safety in that circumstance, in that setting, has a big impact upon our ability to effectively communicate, because we have a lot of emotions that we're trying to navigate as we're communicating. So these are the main stress responses. You would have traditionally heard of fight or flight. Fight or flight means, and the next slide talks in more detail to this, it just means that our nervous system has taken over. They talk about the prefrontal cortex, which is the most human part of our mind. So we've got the prefrontal cortex, most human part of our mind. Then the rest of our brain is mostly kind of mammal. All mammals have the same kind of brain. And then right at the back, they talk about the reptilian or dinosaur brain, which it's got a bit that goes down into the brain stem and feeds the nervous system of the body. So the stress response is when we end up back down here in the brain stem, right back here, because we are like any organism, it's like, okay, something's going on. I've got to either fight whatever's attacking me, or I've got to run away from it. So in conflict situations or communication situations, you'll see the fight response because your voices are being raised, you're starting to debate vigorously, and the feeling you and the other person seem to have in that situation is one of us has to win. Yeah, it's either I win or I die. And in an organizational context, that can be perceived as, well, I've got to be seen as being competent, because if I don't win this argument, I'm going to be seen as incompetent, or I'm going to be walked all over, or this person's just going to treat me like garbage for the rest of my time here. So I've got to get one up on them so that I don't become one down. That's your fight response. Exactly the same physiological response in a human being. A different person has a flight response. It's like, okay, that person's getting angry. When people get angry, I just avoid. I walk away, I put my headphones on, I bury myself in my work, I go and get pissed off at work, I go and have a big weekend because work's really freaking me out. But whatever I do, I'm avoiding the situation. Fawn is when you go, okay, yeah, all right, you're right. I'll just do what you want to do because I feel like you're more powerful than me. You're my manager. I feel like if I get in a fight with you, then it's just going to end badly for me. So if I just appease you, everything's going to be fine. We don't realize that fawn response is also a trauma response. It is this stress. They call them stress responses. They're also trauma responses. Freeze is kind of your, all right, deer in the headlights. Okay, I can't think. I can't respond. I'm so overwhelmed by what's happening right now. It's unexpected for me. I didn't expect you to raise your voice. I get really scared when people raise their voice, because when I was a little kid, I got really scared when Mummy and Daddy raised their voices, because I thought that I was going to get hurt, or they were going to get hurt, or something really bad was going to happen, and I can't even think. How do we then deal with these responses? So the dominant model at the moment comes from a model called polyvagal theory. Polyvagal refers to the vagus nerve, that is that nerve that runs down the spinal cord, where we experience a lot of these emotions are sort of flowing through, and they talk about it as kind of being a ladder in the vagus nerve, and that we need to stay within kind of central range within that ladder. We need to not go up into hyperarousal, where we're going into a fight response, where we're hypervigilant, we're panicking, we're anxious, we're angry, we're agitated, and we need to not drop down into a kind of a shut down, numb, I don't want to be here, I can't handle this anymore, it's too much for me, I'm overwhelmed, I can't cope response. We need to keep ourselves within that optimal arousal window, where we're alert, we're engaged, our ears are tuned in, our eyes are tuned in, we're connected to our senses, we're interested in the other person, we're interested in ourselves, and we're curious about how we can make this work. So we've got to keep ourselves in that window, that sweet spot of where we're able to respond effectively. So we have a whole bunch, and this is where psychology has really focused a lot of its attention in coming up with strategies and techniques and ways of reducing our internal levels of stress and distress, so that we are able to be aware, to be conscious, to stay connected to the human part of our mind, to stay connected to the other person through our mammalian part of our mind. 6 great ways to practice grounding. Some of these you can do now. I can just put my feet on the floor, push my feet on the floor, and activate my thigh muscles. If you're sitting in a chair, you can do it now. Push your feet on the floor, activate your thigh muscles. That, if you maintain that, it actually soothes your nervous system. You can squeeze objects. I've only got a hanky, but people like Play-Doh. There's people. I had a guy in a group the other day, and he goes, "Yep, I've got my whole basket." He was a trainee psychologist, and he's learned. He's got my whole basket of fidget toys, and so he's got Play-Doh, he's got stretchy things, he's got fidget spinners, and that just helps him to ground himself. Satisfy your senses. Wear your favorite colors. Wear your favorite smells. When you're starting to get a bit distressed, go and make a nice cup of tea. Whatever. Figure out what helps you connect to your senses. Self-soothing, showers, baths, candles, something soft, some sort of lovely, nice practice that you do for yourself. For me, it's about going for a walk on the grass, or sitting up in the tree. I've got a tree house. Sitting up in the tree, swimming in the ocean. This morning I have a river close by. I jumped in the river. I swam in the river. Lovely. You can describe, and that's on the right-hand side, you can describe an object. So it's about connecting with your senses. Breathing, the next slide is on breathing. We'll go into that. And distract yourself, just finding some way to get your mind off that thing that you're worrying about, or that perceived threat, and go, right, what can I see? I can see a bag, I can see some clothes, I can see some pillows. What color are they? How many are there? I'm just going to count the pillows. I'm just going to count the objects. How many pens have I got in my drawer? How many pins are there? Just something that gets the mind refocused on something else. Actually works if you're lying awake late at night. They actually recommend playing simple games like Candy Crush for 5 to 10 minutes. So if your brain's ruminating, you have to focus, you have to think, but it's not too taxing. And as long as you don't sort of do it for too long, you can then go, all right, at least my brain's taking a break, and I can now go to sleep. Classic grounding is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Name 5 things that you can see. Name 4 things that you can touch, and you can feel. Yeah. Name 3 things that you can hear. I said a dog bark. You can hear some birds. You can hear my computer whirring. 2 things that you can smell. Not usually much trickier, so you've got to concentrate. And that's what these grounding techniques are about. It's about concentrating on your senses. What are some things I can smell? I'm laughing because we've got bats in our ceiling. We can't get them out. So I smell the bats. And behind the bats, we also have puppy dogs. And so I can smell puppy dog smells. It's something I can taste. Well, brushed my teeth a little while ago. I can still taste the toothpaste in my mouth. So we go through that, and we're connecting with our physiological senses. There's a lovely, lovely phrase by a fellow called Fritz Perls, who invented Gestalt therapy, and he said, lose your mind and come to the senses. Yeah, lose your mind and come to your senses, and it just stops you from being anxious about issues that your mind is creating. Breathing, so there's box breathing. You can do 3 counts or 4 counts, but a box breathing is greatly in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, in for 4. And you keep going around the box until you feel the nervous system start to quiet down. You can manage your breath with 8, 4, 7. Exhaling for 8, in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And then in for 4. So that's 2. My favorite one is Buteyko breathing, which is you just breathe through your nose and you breathe as slowly and deeply as you can. And that's it. How deeply can you breathe? And a bit more, and a bit more, And how far out can you breathe? Anyone else lost sound? And then how slowly can you do it? When you do it really slowly, you almost, okay. When you're breathing through your nose, you can breathe so slowly you can hardly feel it. And if you do it with your eyes closed, just really tune into the sensation of the breath moving in and out of your nose. And again, you're just focusing on your physiology. All of these techniques, you're focusing on your physiology. You're deepening your breath. You're communicating to your nervous system, to your autonomic nervous system, that everything's okay, that actually you're not in danger. There isn't a lion, there isn't a tiger, there isn't some guy hiding in the bushes with a spear who's going to get you. You can actually calm down, body, and let's get away from what's in our head and see if we can tune into what we can see, what we can hear, what's actually going on, and bring our consciousness back into our prefrontal cortex. This slide shows you the Uprise modules. So if you're signed up with Uprise, then you can use these modules and you can practice mindfulness. There's ones in there around breathing, mindfulness, stress reduction, specific kinds of stress reduction for certain stances, dealing with financial stress, dealing with health stress. Really helpful just to take responsibility. If you're walking around with this activated level of, oh gosh, what's going to happen next? Got to have another coffee. Whoa, yeah, what's going on? You are primed to explode. You are primed to make other people anxious. You are primed to get into a situation where you're going to misinterpret what's happening as you being under attack, and you're going to act defensively. So take responsibility, control your physiology, exercise regularly. Best, I think the quote, my favorite quote from Time magazine, was a psychiatrist was quoted as saying, if we could find a pill that does what exercise does for mental health, then we wouldn't need any other pills. So exercise. If you've got anxiety, if you've got depression, if you've got bipolar, if you've got borderline personality disorder, whatever you've got, exercise is one of your number one treatments, and it's available to everybody. The hard bit is to start. So just start. Yesterday, I went somewhere with my son, took him to sport, and I'm not very good like running, but I just started walking. I'm not like, oh, this sucks and it hurts and I don't want to walk. I don't normally walk. And then within about 3 laps of walking around this oval, I'm like, I'm going to have a little jog. And I jogged, and then by the end of it, I think I'd done 15 laps of the 400 or 500 meter oval, and I was like, wow, I'm sweaty and I feel really good, and that really surprised me. So get out there. I doubled up because not only was I doing exercise, I was doing exercise in bare feet on the grass. So I was grounding while I was also exercising. Vent safely if you can. Who can you talk to? Who can you let it out with? Your colleague, your manager, a family member, a friend. If you don't have any of those people, and many of us don't. If I look at that list, well, yes, I can talk to my partner, and I can say some stuff to my colleagues and managers, but really, if I'm going to vent and really let stuff out, because sometimes you just want to swear and use bad language and get angry and raise your voice because that's what's going to get it out of your system, speak to a counsellor, speak to someone at the EAP. If you've signed up with Uprise, then you've got sessions available to you. Unless, of course, we use them all up, in which case you can apply for some more. Tips and tricks for effective communication. Okay, so how much time have we got? Just enough time. All right. So when you are communicating, a lot of it's, in fact, most of it's in the setup. Like effective communication, assertive communication is about being very clear with people from the outset. Yes, don't just dump on somebody else, someone in the chat. Yes. Let people know what they can expect from you and you from them. And the next slides, we're going to talk in more depth around communicating expectations. Know and assert your rights. If you're in an organization, follow the policies, follow the procedures, cite them if you have to, quote them. And when someone says, if someone says to you, yeah, but we don't follow that, then escalate it. Be respectful of others, their views, their expectations. Listen to them. I've just come out of a session with a couple, and do you think that they could listen to each other? Do you think they could respect one another's perspective? No, they had to take what the other person said and twist it and change it and manipulate it and turn it into something else that they thought it was. Don't do that to people. Just take them at face value. don't be scared that their perspective is going to somehow make yours subservient to theirs. Don't be scared that their perspective is somehow going to diminish you. Just let it be, and then share your perspective without needing to dump on theirs. Just go, well, this is how I see things. This is about figuring out your expectations and other people's expectations of you, because that's huge, particularly in the workplace. What do they expect from me? What am I entitled to expect from them? So this is like a step-by-step process that's proven to really clearly get to a point where you're like, I'm really clear. I actually had a client yesterday. She's like, oh, I've got this, I got that, and I've got my family situation, my spouse, and I've got this other situation with a manager, and it's all getting, they want me to do this, and I've been asking them to do that, and then I did this for them, and they did that for me, and I'm starting to get resentful. I'm like, okay, let's just go through it. What's the context? Okay, well, the context is that I'm in a marriage. The context is that I'm in a new relationship. The context is that I work for this specific organization in this specific office in this specific place. The context is that I work for this organization and I work virtually. What's your role? Well, my role is a presenter on behalf of Uprise to Uprise's users and clients. My role is that I am the executive manager of this. My role is that I'm the administrative assistant to the executive manager. That's my role. Okay, well, what's the other person's role in this situation? Well, you guys are attendees at a webinar, at an Uprise webinar. That's your role in this relationship. I've got Teresa in the background who you don't see, and she's the administrative support from Uprise who put the webinar together. Okay, so what therefore, and then what's my goal? Well, I just want to do a good job, and I want to be seen to doing a good job. What's their role? Well, what's their goal? Well, their goal is also for you guys, it's to get some benefit out of this session, and for Teresa to make sure that it runs smoothly. All right. So what do you expect from me? And what can I, based upon my role, I can get pretty clear. Well, you expect me to present good information in a clear way that communicates the topic that you've come here to listen to in a way that fits with, I have to do it in a way that fits with Uprise's model and fits with Uprise's expectations of me as well. Well, what are they? Well, that I'm professional and that I do it in a way that's evidence informed, so that nobody can say, hey, you guys gave us some wrong information and got them in trouble. So that's what the expectations are. My expectations of you, not very much. Show up, say some things in the chat, but otherwise you can do what you want. My expectations of Teresa, that she's here on time before me, that she's got it all organized, that she's got my slides uploaded, and that she engages with me in a civil and respectful and mutually respectful and professional manner. So once you got those expectations clear, you can then verbalize them. Understanding what's coming, what the other person wants and needs, that often takes another level of skill. So the skills here are reflective listening and empathy, to understand what the other person wants and needs, what their expectations are of me. Because sometimes I'll say to someone I'm working with, so what do you think the other person expects from me? And there's this thing that happens, it's like this shutter comes down. I don't know. Well, hang on, you work with them. What's their role? What do you imagine? I don't know. Okay. In that case, you need to, first of all, go back and self-regulate. And that's what I normally do. Okay. As I'll say to the client, just breathe. And I want you to do some deep breathing and sit with that. Yeah? And then sort of imagine the situation in your mind. Right? And imagine yourself having a conversation with this person. Put your own thoughts and feelings to the side, your own expectations to the side for the minute. You need to be open. Now, listen closely to what they're saying. What have they already communicated? What have they put in writing? What have they said? What are the policies and procedures saying? They're always communicating, husbands and wives, always communicating, but not really listening to one another because they're speaking different languages. So you've got to listen closely and say, then you've got to repeat it back. So what I'm hearing you say is that right? And the other person goes, well, you got the first bit right, but no, that bit's wrong. What I was saying was blah, 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 blah. And often they go blah, blah, blah for a long time. You go, okay, yeah, take some notes. And then you go, okay, I'm going to repeat back again, repeat the clarification. Okay, so the first bit was right. This is what you feel about this part, but this part over here, what you feel and think about this part is that this is what should be happening so that you get your needs met and that other person gets their needs met as well. Is that right? Yes, you've got it. Now, be aware that once that happens, they'll probably keep on talking and you need to keep on doing it until they've run out of steam. If you try and go, yeah, well, in response to that, then you're still going to be in conflict. Just just park it for a bit. Just listen. If you need to come back and have a conversation another day, that's fine. Don't rush it. Just check in the time. Oh, what's that time? Empathy is like active listening on steroids. Empathy is when we imagine we're listening actively, we've heard what they've got to say, and we imagine that we're in their shoes. Now then, based upon what we've said, we use our imaginations. I get people to just imagine, okay, you're in their shoes, imagine you're the manager, or imagine you're the staff member, you're the administrative assistant. And, you know, you'll think about what that would be to have that role. What are your responsibilities? What is it like? What do you see when you come to work every day? So in that situation where you're bringing this to them, how do you imagine that they might feel? What do you imagine they might think? What do you think they might want? What do you imagine they might need? What do you imagine that they're expecting from you? And then share that with them. So I imagine that you might be wanting me to wrap up this session because it's already 1 o'clock. Key takeaways. Goal is for everyone to feel safe. Be responsible, regulate your own stress levels. Express your expectations, wants, or needs clearly and assertively, and use empathy and active listening to effectively understand and communicate what the other person wants and needs back to them. And that's all we've got time for today. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you being here today, and I hope that you got at least some of what you needed out of our presentation today.